Have you ever had a moment that completely changed the course of your life? A split-second decision that seemed like a mistake until it wasn't? That's what happened to me, and I'm about to share every heart-pounding detail. If this story resonates with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more real stories that might just give you the courage to take your own leap of faith. It was raining the night everything changed between Ellie and me. Not a gentle spring shower, but the kind of downpour that soaks through your clothes in seconds, that drowns out all other sounds except for the thundering of your own heart. We'd been best friends for 7 years. 7 years of movie nights and inside jokes, of helping each other through breakups and job interviews, of being each other's emergency contact. 7 years of me secretly loving her, of swallowing those 3 words every time they threatened to spill out. I remember how she looked that night, standing on my doorstep at 2 a.m., mascara streaking down her face, her honey blonde hair plastered to her head. She'd just broken up with Ryan, her boyfriend of 8 months. The one I'd secretly hated because he never appreciated how she always hummed while cooking, or how she could quote entire episodes of Friends from memory, or how her laugh started as a giggle and built into something that filled the whole room. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the rain. I stepped aside without a word, grabbing a towel from the bathroom as she dripped onto my welcome mat. When I returned, she was hugging herself, shivering slightly despite the summer heat. "Here," I said, handing her the towel. Our fingers brushed, and I felt that familiar jolt, the one I'd been feeling for years whenever we touched. The one I'd gotten so good at ignoring. "Thanks, Alex," she murmured, dabbing at her face. "Sorry for showing up like this." "Don't apologize. You know you're always welcome here." I gestured toward the couch. "Do you want to talk about it?" She nodded, sinking into the cushions. I sat beside her, careful to leave enough space between us. The space that had always been there, the invisible boundary I never dared to cross. "He said I was too much," she finally said, her voice small. "Too emotional, too invested, too everything." She looked up at me, her blue eyes swimming with tears. "Am I too much, Alex?" Something inside me broke at those words. At the thought that someone had made this vibrant, passionate woman believe she needed to be less. "No," I said firmly. "You're not too much. You're exactly enough. You're perfect." She blinked, surprised by the intensity in my voice. A tear slipped down her cheek, and without thinking, I reached out to brush it away. My hand lingered on her face, and suddenly the air between us felt charged, electric. I don't know who moved first. Maybe we both did. All I know is that one moment we were looking at each other, and the next, my lips were on hers. It was brief, just a whisper of a kiss, but it sent shockwaves through my entire body. I pulled back immediately, horror washing over me. "I'm sorry," I stammered. "I shouldn't have." "Don't be sorry," she interrupted, her eyes never leaving mine. Then, so softly I almost didn't hear it, "Do it properly this time." Time seemed to stop. The rain outside, the ticking of the clock on my wall, the whole world faded away until there was nothing but Ellie and me, and the words hanging in the air between us. "What?" I whispered, certain I'd misheard. She moved closer, eliminating that careful space I'd maintained for so long. I said, "Do it properly this time." And so I did. I cupped her face in my hands and kissed her the way I'd wanted to for 7 years. Not hesitantly or apologetically, but with every ounce of love I'd kept hidden away. And she kissed me back with equal fervor, her hands tangling in my hair, pulling me closer. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, she rested her forehead against mine. "What took you so long?" she asked, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Fear," I admitted. "I was afraid of losing you." "You could never lose me," she said. "I've been waiting for you to catch up." It turns out, while I'd been silently loving her for years, she'd been doing the same. All those boyfriends, all those relationships that never quite worked out, they all had one thing in common: they weren't me. But our story wasn't as simple as a kiss in the rain and a happily ever after. Real life rarely is. The next morning brought with it doubts and questions. Was this just a rebound for her? A moment of vulnerability after her breakup? And for me, could I really risk our friendship, the most important relationship in my life, for the chance at something more? We agreed to take things slow, to figure out what this new dimension to our relationship meant. But slow proved difficult when every touch felt like coming home, when every conversation seemed to reveal new layers to a person I thought I already knew completely. 2 weeks after that rainy night, we had our first real date. I took her to the botanical gardens, remembering how she'd once mentioned wanting to see the night blooming cereus, a flower that blooms for just one night a year. I'd called ahead, confirmed they had one about to bloom, and planned our evening around it. When the flower finally opened, unfurling its petals in the moonlight, Ellie turned to me with wonder in her eyes. "How did you know?" she asked. "I listened to you," I said simply. "I always have." She kissed me then, surrounded by exotic plants and the sweet scent of flowers. "I think I'm falling in love with you," she whispered against my lips. My heart soared, but a small voice of doubt still lingered. "Are you sure it's not too soon? After Ryan?" She placed a finger over my lips. "Ryan was me trying to get over you. So was David before him, and Michael before that. I've been in love with you for years, Alex. I just never thought you felt the same way. It seemed impossible that we'd both been harboring the same secret feelings, both been too afraid to speak them aloud. But as we walked hand in hand through the gardens, I realized that perhaps this was exactly how it was meant to happen. That we needed those years of friendship, of building trust and understanding, to create the foundation for something deeper. But our new relationship wasn't without its challenges. Our friend group was surprised, some supportive, others concerned about what would happen if things didn't work out. Ellie's parents, who had always treated me like a son, suddenly viewed me with suspicion, worried I'd break their daughter's heart. And then there was the biggest challenge of all, learning to be vulnerable with someone who knew all my flaws, all my weaknesses. It was one thing to present a polished version of myself to a new partner, but Ellie had seen me at my worst. She knew about my fear of failure, my tendency to withdraw when hurt, my stubborn pride. 3 months into our relationship, we had our first major fight. It was about something trivial, I can't even remember what now, but it escalated quickly, years of unspoken tension suddenly finding their voice. "You always do this," she shouted, pacing my living room. "You shut down instead of talking to me. And you push too hard." I fired back. Not everything needs to be discussed to death. We glared at each other, at an impasse. Then she grabbed her jacket and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" I asked, panic rising in my chest. "Home. I need space." "So you're just leaving? That's your solution?" She turned, her hand on the doorknob. "No, that's your solution. To shut down and push people away. I'm just not going to stand here and let you do it to me." The door closed behind her with a finality that shook me to my core. I stood there, alone in my apartment, feeling like I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life. I gave her an hour, the longest hour of my life, before I drove to her place. It was raining again, a gentle drizzle this time, as if the sky was shedding quiet tears. She opened the door on the third knock, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. "Alex. I'm sorry," I blurted out. "You're right. I do shut down. It's easier than admitting I'm scared." "Scared of what?" she asked softly. "Of how much I love you. Of how much power you have to hurt me." I took a deep breath. "Of losing you." She stepped back, allowing me inside. We sat on her couch, the same one where we'd watched countless movies together as friends, now facing each other as something more. I'm scared too, she admitted. Scared that one day you'll wake up and realize I'm not what you want. That you'll regret crossing that line. I took her hands in mine. That's not going to happen. You're not just what I want, Ellie. You're what I need. You're everything. We talked for hours that night, really talked, about our fears and hopes and dreams. About how to fight fairly, how to communicate better, how to love each other through the hard times. It wasn't our last fight, not by a long shot. But it was the one that taught us how to come back to each other, how to be honest even when it hurt, how to love not just the easy parts of each other but the difficult ones too. A year after that rainy night when everything changed, I took Ellie back to the botanical gardens. The night blooming cereus was opening again, its once-a-year miracle unfolding under the stars. As we watched, I dropped to one knee and pulled out a ring. Not a diamond, Ellie had always said they were overrated, but an opal, her birthstone, surrounded by tiny sapphires that matched her eyes. Ellie, I said, my voice steady despite the hammering of my heart, 7 years ago, I met my best friend. 1 year ago, I kissed that friend and found the love of my life. You've seen me at my worst and somehow love me anyway. You challenge me, support me, make me laugh, and drive me crazy in the best possible way. Will you marry me? Tears spilled down her cheeks as she nodded, unable to speak. When I slipped the ring onto her finger, she finally found her voice. Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times yes. Our wedding was 6 months later, a small ceremony in her parents' backyard, surrounded by the people who had watched our friendship bloom into love. Her father, who had eventually come around, hugged me before walking her down the aisle. Take care of my girl, he said gruffly. I will, I promised. For the rest of my life. When Ellie appeared in her simple white dress, wildflowers in her hair, I felt my breath catch. She was radiant, glowing with happiness, and the look in her eyes when she saw me, like I was her whole world, nearly brought me to my knees. Our vows were personal, filled with inside jokes and promises only we fully understood. And when the officiant pronounced us married, when I leaned in to kiss my wife for the first time, I thought of that rainy night and her words, do it properly this time. I did. And I've been doing it properly every day since. It's been 5 years now since that first kiss. We've had our share of struggles, job changes, a miscarriage that nearly broke us, the day-to-day challenges of merging 2 lives into one. But through it all, we've held on to what matters, our love, our friendship, our promise to always find our way back to each other. Last month, we welcomed our daughter into the world. We named her Rain, a private acknowledgement of the night that changed everything. As I watch Ellie rock our daughter to sleep, singing softly, I'm overwhelmed by gratitude for that moment of courage, for that impulsive kiss that could have ruined everything but instead gave me everything I ever wanted. Sometimes the biggest risks lead to the greatest rewards. Sometimes, I'm sorry, is just the beginning of the most beautiful story. And sometimes, the love of your life has been standing right in front of you all along, just waiting for you to see what was always there. If you're watching this and there's someone in your life you've been afraid to be honest with, someone you've been holding back from, I hope our story gives you courage. Not every risk pays off, not every friendship can become something more. But some can. Some should. And you'll never know unless you try. So like this video if it touched your heart, subscribe for more stories that might just change your life, and remember, sometimes the most terrifying leap is the one that leads you exactly where you're meant to be.